Okay. Hello, everybody. It is Pseudo with MMOBuff.TV. It is Friday night. It is Cosmotronic. And yes, we are missing a Mizpah, which is why we have the Mizpah corn in his place. However, I am joined by he who is known as the Evil One, the Evil Chua, Gazimoff. We have missed you. We have absolutely missed you. Are you with us for now? Do we get to pick your
I am with you for
brains?
now.
Oh, for now. Excellent.
For now.
So a heck of a lot of stuff has happened within WildStar within the past week, so much so that I'm pretty certain that many people's brains pretty much exploded. I know mine has. And so now, basically, I'm going to be like all over you trying to figure out all the stuff that you like can share. 'Cause you
Okay.
can share stuff now, can't you?
Yes, I can.
I'm
Because
watching
I'm one
it.
of those evil press types. So, yes.
Ah! Are you trying to imply that all press types are evil or just that you're the evil press type?
I'd like to kind of like have the monopoly on evil, if that's
You
possible.
Wow, I can totally see that too. It would really work for you. But yes, everyone, thank you so much for joining us on the Cosmotronic. I know that there are a lot of people who are currently live streaming WildStar, so the fact that you're taking the time to catch up with us is pretty ballin'. As a reminder, last week's show we had Aiko on. If you haven't had a chance to see that episode, go check it out. That was a really long episode that ended up getting split into two parts because it ended up having the post show be just as long as the pre show, and there was a lot of discussion about everything from PvE to PvP and how the meta class actually impacts the game with its play style, considering the fact that it can do damage and heal at exactly the same time, which can lead to some rather interesting implications. And then, of course, this week we had the drop about the engineer, or as we called it, the Redactineer. Totally had to name the show off of it because we'll probably never use that term again. Um, which is kind of a sad thing because it was a really good term. It was a really well developed term from the community along with Redactic. But hey, it happens. Also, please remember, we have other shows. Monday night, we have our podcast where we discuss literally anything that has to do with MMOs. This week, on this Monday, I should say, it's all about tanks. Last week, we had the Hive Leader join us to discuss the awesomeness that was the healing part of the Holy Trinity. And then this Monday, it is all about tanks. And I can't tell you who we have as a guest yet because it's kind of a secret. But we do have one. So, yeah, as it is, we're now going to just shift focuses and go completely into WildStar. I'm kind of upset because of the way that everything is being redone in my house right now. Like, I have no kitchen. I don't have my WildStar backdrops, and I haven't had them for like a couple weeks, and it is killing me because I'm like, I miss them. Even though you have this awesome little sign behind you, Gazzy, that just says WildStar.
Hmm. Just a little one.
Just a tiny little one. Oh, yes, as a reminder, if Twitch chat seems to be a problem, or if you want to chat with us at any point in time, we do have an IRC chat now, and it is, you can find it through Global Gamers, MMOBuff is our chat room, or you can come in via our website at MMOBuff.TV/chat. And all the things will be looked at and watched, kind of a thing. But yes. Oh my goodness. Whoa. That was weird. Whoops. There we go. Ha! Now I can see everything. So, Gazzy, do you want to lead us into the drops of the week?
Okay, so in terms of the drops of the week, first of all, there was the news about in fact, 2 weeks, because I've been away last week, so I missed everything, which was a bit kind of strange. But we've had the medic stuff. Now, this week's been all about the engineer. So we kind of had an introduction to the engineer last week with a lot of press information, but this week
Ishmael.
we've had the... Yes.
Poor Ishmael.
Poor Ishmael. This week we've had a lot more in terms of the Reddit AMA. We've had the DevSpeak video. We've had the class page go up, and I think we're getting another live stream from the guys at Carbine tomorrow, which is hopefully going to look at the engineer in a bit more detail. Fingers crossed. But apart from that, there's been a bit of more news that's come out for WildStar, and that is that the press NDA or the press embargo, whichever way you like to slice it, has been lifted partially.
I was
So
about to say, not
Carbine,
fully lifted. There's this like they're like slowly teasing you. This
yeah.
seems to be their
So
methodology.
so last week, Carbine invited a whole bunch of people from the press, from I think some fan sites as well, so places like WildStar ESP and stuff like that, into the beta, uh, and said, "Go on, have fun, play the game, and you can share anything you like from level 1 to level 15." So places went nuts. We've seen character creation videos. We've seen in-depth on the engineer and the medic. We've seen PvP. We've seen crafting articles. We've seen interviews from a event that they were doing. So they've interviewed people like Stefan Frost, Mike Donatelli, and Matt McCaskey, who's the creative director. A huge amount of information is now out there. And we started to see live streams cropping up as well. So the guys from the press who are really into it, and from the fan sites as well. So we've seen people like Zap Robo from WildStar Central. We've seen a couple of other people from some other fan sites. I think we've seen some of the German and Spanish fan sites starting to live stream as well. And I shall be live streaming myself, hopefully over the weekend. So to take people through the whole WildStar experience from my perspective as well. So,
Well, it's going to be an interesting perspective.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm going to be doing a fair bit around crafting and a fair bit around PvP. So if you're interested in either of those two side of things, so if you want to see how crafting works in terms of both the hobbies that are out there and in terms of the various trade skills and gathering and stuff like that, then I should be going through all that. And if you're interested in finding out how Walatiki Temple works and watching me get my face pounded into the ground repeatedly, then be my guest, because I'll be doing some of that as well. Although I am getting better by small increments.
Well, my question to you, and this stems from the fact that, they're releasing all this interesting information. They're lifting the NDA on some of the peoples, and it almost seems as if the people at Carbine realize they just don't have time to do it all. So the best thing to do is sort of crowdsource the exposure. Because like you said, you now have people with the character creation videos. You now have people who are walking through the different classes, etc. That's kind of relieving a lot of the stress on their shoulders.
I think part of it is, but I also think it's a case of that they think some of the stuff that they've been producing is strong enough that it can stand on its own 2 feet. And I'd say that to a large extent, we are getting to that stage now. The leveling experience is fun. The combat experience is really, really good. I mean, I really want to stress this. The best thing about WildStar so far, apart from the world, is the combat experience. If you've played things like... Now, I play World of Warcraft, or I go back to World of Warcraft, and it feels quaint and old-fashioned and tired. The fact I can double tap to dodge, I can double jump, all of these really cool things in WildStar. I play other MMOs and I think, where's my double tap to dodge gone? Where's my double jump gone? It's like, frustrating. But the whole combat system feels much more fluid, much more dynamic, much more rapid. It raises the bar. And I also think if you've played Guild Wars 2 and you kind of got a bit burned by the telegraph system that they have there, this is better by a long way. That's not to knock Guild Wars 2 too much, because I think they kind of made a step in the right direction. But the clarity of the telegraphs is vastly improved. The layout is improved. You can easily spot what's causing a particular telegraph now, because most of them are cone shapes rather than dropping a circle over there. I think the biggest thing that I miss from Guild Wars 2 in terms of the telegraphs are the combo fields, where you can drop one on top of another and create multiplicative effects. That doesn't
So
seem
we
to
don't
happen so
have
much.
combo in WildStar.
We don't have combo fields in WildStar, so I can't drop
No
down a flaming field.
combo. Sorry.
Yeah, big shame. But but I do still enjoy it. It's really a neat thing. And there was also a bit of fear that you can get situations like a kind of crazy disco ball effect. That doesn't even seem to happen from what I've seen. Yes, in Walatiki Temple, when you've got 10 versus 10, things can get a little interesting when you're carrying the tiki mask and you're trying to leg it back to your base, and you've got like
Right.
8 or 9 of the opposite team trying to drop down
We need
telegraphs on top of
we
you.
need to pause on that because I want you to go into detail about this. Now, one of the things I mentioned last week was the fact that I really wish there was more PvP information. I mean,
Hmm.
there is a heck of a lot of PvE information, and a big part of that is the fact that in general, in an MMO, you're not going to be PvPing 100% of the time. If you were, it
Mm.
wouldn't be the type of MMORPG that WildStar is.
Yeah.
It would be something else. However, what to me is rather interesting is that there is something that we can talk about PvP wise, and I want to explain how it's different from some of the other games that we have actually played. Because it is
Hmm.
a capture the flag scenario, but it's not your average capture the flag scenario that we'd say like in Warsong Gulch and WoW or something like that. It's got its own little twist. So if you could do
Yes.
me a favor and just break down for the people who may not be aware of what exactly it
Mhm.
is, tell us a little bit about this PvP thing. And I'm going to just let
Okay.
people know what I know about it makes me want to go back and PvP, even though I've
Hmm.
stopped PvPing. So there is something about this, and it may have to do with the fact that this is not your typical I'm a druid, I run fast, I win kind of scenario.
Hmm.
It doesn't work like that in this. So it might be the
Yeah.
fact that there's a challenge to it. So tell us about this. Names and all.
Okay.
Break it down,
Okay.
Gazzy.
Right. Okay. So currently there are 2 PvP instances that we've got, or 2 PvP battlegrounds rather, I should say, that we've got at the moment that are accessible from level 1 to 15. And one of those, which is the main one I've been playing, is Wild Tiki Temple, which is a kind of moody temple. If you don't know who the moodies are, they're kind of short, pygmy type guys who wear masks and have kind of necromantic powers, so they kind of raise their own dead and stuff like that. They're kind of a bit weird, a bit spooky, but
Hmm.
they've got a fair amount of lore behind them. There's a ton of stuff on WildStar Central if you want to really dig into their background. So anyway, the temple itself has 2 spawn rooms at either end of a kind of big bowl in the middle. The great thing about these spawn rooms is they're kind of raised on cliffs, so you don't get spawn or graveyard camping too much. All you get is you kind of look over the cliff and say, "Are we being camped? Okay, I'll take a different route down to or different route to drop down to the main area." And this main area, as I said, this huge bowl, and across the top of it, you've got 2 wooden bridges which kind of meet as a kind of cross in the middle. Around that whole central area, you've got these moody masks that can spawn. And the idea is to capture one of these masks when it spawns and take it back to your control point,
And they can
which
spawn in
isn't the
any
same as
location up there?
they can spawn in any location in that kind of area. So you're not kind of camping a particular
Area.
spawn site because the area you need to cover is quite large. Your control room and your spawn point are 2 different rooms
I believe you
as
said
well.
bowl, by
So
the way, not ball.
bowl, as in dip,
Bowl.
as in stuff you put popcorn in.
Bowl. So you got your spawning masks.
Yeah. So you got your spawning masks. You grab your mask and you carry it back to your control point.
Hmm.
Now, if you want to get a mask, you can either wait for one to spawn, pick it up and take it back, or if the other team have a mask, you can creep round to their base and steal it from them and then take it back, which creates this really cool dynamic that you have to be in 2 places at once. You need to protect the masks you've already captured, but you need to go out there and try and capture more masks. Otherwise, someone else might sneak into your base and grab your masks, or someone else might just capture them as they spawn. So it means that you get less turtling, which is a good thing, and you get less kind of zerging, because
And
if the
camping.
group sticks together, and camping, because if the group sticks together in one blob, then they're leaving their masks undefended that they've already captured. So you can just go round the zerg and capture masks while they're not paying any attention, if that makes sense. And I think that's
It's
a really good method.
they seem to have learned from previous games.
Oh,
That's a simple way to put it.
exactly. I mean, the person that's doing a lot of the PvP design work, Jen Gordy, really knows her stuff in terms of.
I
I've
so
played against
appreciate
him.
her.
I've played against her in Team Fortress 2, and she is devastating as the Pyro. I She's really, really good in arena. She in WildStar's arena, she's very, very good. She designed the PvP that was in Lord of the Rings Online as well, which was kind of like you play as the bad guys kind of thing. And she's been doing this kind of thing for quite a while, and picked up on a lot of the errors and a lot of the mistakes that other games have made. And so it really feels like Wall of Tiki Temple, at least, is very much okay, they've fixed all of the problems that have come across. When you look at places like Warsong Gulch, which you mentioned before, where you get things like graveyard camping, which is really annoying, where you get things like turtling, which is really annoying, it solved both of those problems very, very cleverly.
Aussie is asking, can you kill the mask carrier to obtain the mask from the mask character, like you did in Hopball?
Yes, yes, you can, which is fantastic. A
Interesting. So
dropped
things
mark.
like tethering and crowd control are going to be exceptionally important in something like
Yeah.
this, which
Oh, yeah.
basically means you're doing it right.
Yeah. The other thing is that if you drop the mask, then it will stay there for a certain period of time before it despawns as well. So if you're going to capture it, you need to get in quick to grab it. If you're going to, if you want to stop the people from recovering it, then you can just chew them up in combat and tie them up so they can't spend enough time to pick up the mask. It's not an instant grab thing. It has got a bit of a cast time. So if you can lay down on stuns and keep them occupied and keep pushing back their abilities, then they won't be able to pick that mask back up.
Wow. Okay. That just really, I'm really excited about PvP. Is there a
Oh,
time limit on
it's
the match, or is it just sort of left to go for it? Because I remember the old days of
Mhm.
playing a game, leaving it, going for dinner, sleeping, waking up the next day, and that same exact match is still going on. Granted, I'm talking like the 4 or 5 day AV battles, but
Yeah.
is there a limit on this capture the flag so I know whether I'm actually going to get some sleep?
So I haven't come across a limit. I wouldn't be surprised
Wow.
if there is one. I wouldn't be surprised if you get something like a half an hour mark, maybe an hour mark tops, would be a limit. But for me, the matches are going every they last about 15 minutes, and the queue times are popping like crazy because people are
It's
just
new.
piling in to do this. Well, A, it's new. B, it's fun. It's innately fun because there are
Mm.
so many ways you can play the match back and forth. There are so many ways you can create strategies and plays for yourself. It's not kind of very systematic. It's very kind of like, well, if I do this, then I can sneak around, get the mask from their base, but then I've got to fight through them to get back to my own base. So it creates all of those kind of interesting problems that you don't get with um, with other battleground shaped PvP. So I think it's a really, really solid one. The other one, which is Halls of the Bloodsworn, kicks in at level 15, and I have not played it yet. So
Ooh.
I have been
Well, as we
focusing
know,
all
we
my
can only
time.
go from 1 to 15 in the
Yeah.
NDA stuff. So,
Mm,
yeah, as much as I really want to pick your brains and say, tell me more about that, I understand that even if you had played, you couldn't tell me, probably.
yeah.
But I do. I've noticed in in the couple of the chats, because I'm following all kinds of chats as we're chatting here.
Hmm.
A couple of things have gotten brought up. One of the things is something that I was talking to you about, which is the
Hmm.
objectification of women in
Hmm.
WildStar. Now, there are a couple of things that need to be noted. One of the things I'm going to remind people, we're not your average show. We are going to tell you things that we do not agree with, and we will
Hmm.
let you know why. In this particular case, there was many posts, handle it, about the fact that the female characters within WildStar seem to be objectified. I want to point out before I even throw this at Gazimoff, because this is the kind of thing where Gazi can just go on and ramble, and I will have to probably interrupt him. But WildStar is the very first game that I have run across where there is a race that is sort of neither male or female. That's the
Yep.
Chua. So the fact
Hmm.
that, we're going to go into a bit about the objectification of the female characters within WoW, or not WoW, sorry, within WildStar. I'm saying WoW because I saw someone say WoW. But anyway, with the objectification, I want to also point out this is the first game company I have seen that has produced something that is innately adorable for both men and women, and yet it has no sex. You can't sit there and say I want a female Chua or a male Chua. So
Hmm.
keep that in mind, folks. That to me is an exceptional leap forward when it comes to character creation. But yes, so, Gazi, when it comes to WildStar, there is this huge, oh my goodness, the females have been objectified. I kind of want to point out the males have been objectified as well from everything that I have seen. So, I don't think it's just a female issue, I think it's a male issue. And I want to know your thoughts on it. Good, bad, ugly. Do you agree? Do you disagree?
Um, I would kind of weigh it in the balance, if that makes sense. So WildStar is heavily inspired by Pixar style animation and Disney style animation, and that does tend to push it down a particular art style in terms of the caricatures and the physiology.
Mm.
Now, that does lead to a situation where you're looking at some models and you're thinking, where exactly are the internal organs stored? But
Yeah, I can get behind that
yeah,
in some cases, but it's
but
a game, right?
it's
There's
not.
no harm in this. Is there?
But it's not. Well, it's a difficult thing to say, and I have to be honest that sitting on my uh, throne of privilege, I don't think it's an easy one for me to try and tackle.
Mm.
Um, I think that Carbine do a good job. I think the fact that you've got things like the engineer taking a very prominent role in both the that video that Carbine produced, the WildStar flick, and in terms of the other roles that they created. So they meet the Dominion. You've got a female Dominion soldier, from the looks of things, leading a troop of men through. So I think that they are
Mm-hmm.
trying to say that that there is kind of an equality there in terms of it's not just kind of men going out and fighting, but there is a fair bit of balance there. But it's a difficult thing to say. I mean, you want to create characters which are appealing for people to want to play. You want to create characters that people can say, oh yeah, I want to play one of those because that looks cool or that looks awesome and stuff like that. Um,
Ah, I've just noticed a couple of people in different chats have all basically said the same thing. So some of them are
mhm,
saying they don't care about the quote unquote objectification. That's not their concern. Their concern is that all the female body types
mhm,
share, or all the races share the same female body type.
mhm.
So there's really no quote unquote difference, so to speak.
And that's something I can kind of understand and appreciate. The fact that I would have personally thought that the female Granite would have been a bit burlier and a bit more bouldery than than she currently is. I think the female Orin and the female human are similar. I think the female Makari is a little bit strange in terms of, well, why would a robot be like that? But
How many people are going to get upset over that because they love Voxine? I mean, think about this. You have the paths introduced to people through a female Makari who pretty much threatens the lives of everyone present, and the gaming community of WildStar fell in love with her.
yes, you're quite right.
So
You're quite
be
right.
nice to
So,
Voxine. She might hurt you.
like I said, this is a difficult one to discuss, and I do get the kind of where people are coming from when they say
Hmm.
the body types are a bit samey and a bit boring. And to be honest, when we've seen other MMOs which have had sliders so you can customize things and tweak things to the nth degree, and when you look at things like character creators for Eve and so on, where you've got huge amounts of customization, then yes, I fully understand where people are coming from, where they say, my options are limited here. Um, but I think in terms of how they should push their art style and how they should be promoting or encouraging particular aspects of their game, I think that's a bit more of a difficult thing to try and respond to.
Mm.
I think that if it was me, I would have been tempted to have a bit more variety with the Granite female, to be brutally honest with you. I would have preferred to see someone who's a bit burlier or have a couple of different body types. So you can say, okay, you want to play a female Granite that looks like she's been carved out of rock rather than sculpted down. But
Well, you
that's
know,
just.
there's something we've discussed this before on our Monday shows. We've talked
Mhm,
about the fact that, you have to have some give and take. You can either
mm,
have them spend so much time on the complete customization of the character graphically, visually, and letting you have the ability to make someone's nose this big versus this big, someone's head this big versus
mhm.
this big, someone's height this big. You can give all the people all the stuff, but do you want them spending that much time developing that part of the game versus other content that they need to make as well? So there's sort of something there. I mean, if you look at it, one of the big things they talked about is they made it easier for themselves to design really cool weapons because all of the weapon types are specific to the class. So that has freed
Mhm,
up a whole bunch of content, visual design, and also allowed them to do a lot more itemization control, which is very important. So
mhm.
we can look at this and I can sit there and go, I wish that I could make an Orin that looks like a roly-poly, pudging kind of creature that rolls around instead of some svelte little thing. And instead of this giant tail, she has wings or something. If I had that much control, they'd have to design the armor. They'd have to go through and make certain it fit all of this stuff. And I think that might actually impact the ability to create the content that everyone's craving, like the PvP content, the PvE content, the different path styles, etc., etc. So, I mean, I think there's a give and
Well,
take that has to be made there.
but- okay, I think that's. I think you might be going a little bit extreme in terms of
I
saying,
might
"Oh,
be.
I want bat wings for my Orin."
Oh,
It's like, no, because that'd be.
it was just an example. And yes, it was an extreme example, but the example had to be made. Because you can't
So
have bat ears. So why not have bat wings?
I think that what needs to be borne in mind is that for everything that exists within WildStar, your character is the thing that is going to be with you the longest.
Hmm.
Mounts are transient. Cities are transient. When every expansion comes
Especially with
out,
a
if you
settler.
have any, exactly. Um, Housing is transient. You might want to upgrade your house or replace your house or bulldoze it and start again. The
Hmm.
thing which stays the same is 9 times out of 10 your character. And now people have started saying, okay, you can put it through in other games, you can put it through a recustomization. But a lot of people spend time trying to choose their character carefully and then stick with it for the rest of the time they're playing that game. Heck, I know people who have not recustomized their character since they started playing World of Warcraft, and they are now horrified at the changes that are going to be brought in with the
Skin changing?
new, yeah, the skin changes and the
Mm.
high resolution models because of all of the because it changes their character. And so yeah, I am really sympathetic to people who say, well, I want to do it once and do it right, rather than uh, and spend more time on my character choices than anything else in the game, because it's the thing that stays with you the longest. So I think, yes, to a certain extent, they need to kind of do things like, say, limit the number of weapons and stuff like that, so you don't have
Mm.
huge amounts of customization on the weaponry front and the classes front and stuff like that. But in terms of saying, well, we're going to not give people sliders for this, that, and the other, particularly when you look at the amount of
Is there
facial
a bus
sliders that
slider
are
side?
available, a bus light.
A bust slider, because a lot of games will allow the women's bust to be customized to be either huge or tiny or anything. Is that actually in the customization?
No, all of the sliders and tuners and stuff like that are around facial features like size of nose, um, size of mouth, and stuff like that. So,
Hmm.
all you've got a really kind of limited set in terms of uh, changing the overall physical appearance of your character. You can change the head bit, but in
Hmm.
terms of the rest of it, not so much. So I think that seeing sliders there would be a useful thing. But as you said, you then run into the issue where if you have sliders for this, that, and the other, you start distorting the armor that people are wearing, which changes textures. You start to get clipping issues and stuff like that. But I think it's something worth pursuing because a lot of people will be grateful for it.
Two things. Jared R. mentions he understands the lack of the body sliders, but they still could have given the females more difference between the races like they did for the
Yeah,
males. And
yeah.
Suliko states, she only wants bust sliders if we can actually have crotch sliders for men.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a lot of character customization that can be
Mhm.
discussed, but I kind of want to pull back to ask you if you think that women are actually being objectified. Or is the female being objectified? Not necessarily women's, because it's really the body type that is quote unquote being discussed here. Is it being objectified? I mean, do you think so?
I think that is a difficult question to answer in the context of an MMO where you are actually playing said character.
Mm.
I haven't seen anything yet which stands out to me and says, this is a female who is only present and only there to be looked at, which
That's a
is
good point.
what objectification is. I think that the character models, to an extent, are absolutely fine, and I think yes, a bit more versatility or a bit more choice would go a long way.
Mm.
But I think in terms of saying, is this game loaded full of objectification? Well, not really. When you compare it to
Mm.
some of the things which I have had the horrible experience of being forced to play, things like Scarlet. Well, have you ever played Scarlet Blade?
I have been told to avoid it.
Okay,
So,
so
as the case may be, I haven't had a chance to. I
so
haven't had that pleasure.
yeah, so if you want to see what objectification in an MMO looks like, I would encourage you to play Scarlet Blade. Scarlet Blade is a game where you can only play females and where they wander around wearing next to nothing. Okay,
Okay. Now that's
so
objectification.
yeah, yeah, it's horrendous objectification and it's appalling. The game isn't that good either. But yeah, I would seriously say if you want to see what objectification in an MMO looks like, play that one. That's a very extreme example, and it's horrific, and you will hate it for so many other reasons besides that. Um, I think that there are more issues and more MMOs that are problematic than WildStar, if I'm brutally honest. I think that there are a lot of things which, for example, come out of the Asian market, which we look at and you go, that's not right. But Carbine, I think, are doing relatively okay on this one.
Well, see, now here's where I get to throw my 2 cents in because I've basically picked on you this
Mm-hmm.
entire time. I personally do not think that objectification is being done. I do agree that I think it's kind of a shame that you don't have as many different body types for the women because, I mean, if you look at it, when you are looking at the, oh, good grief, my brain just can't remember what the heck they are called. The Draken. There we go. When you're looking at the Draken, the female Draken is standing upright and she's got the same kind of body type as all the other females in the game, but the male Draken is hunched over like he's some kind of Neanderthal. There is some kind of physical difference that
Mm.
they are offering the men that they're not offering the women, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it would have been nicer had they had a bit more, hey, make them slumpy or, give them something a little different. Body type
Mm.
wise, give them that kind of customization, I agree with. However, if I had to pick, would I state that WildStar is sexist in any way? I don't think that's the case. I think what has happened, like you said, you have the. I will just go back to Voxine. I mean, who doesn't love Voxine? Voxine is in
Mm.
charge. She will shoot you. She will own you. Voxine is crazy cool. You've got quite a few female characters that are very strong within the lore of what has been presented. I mean, when we got introduced to the Exiles, we didn't get introduced through a male character. We got introduced through a
Yeah,
female character who had a little bit of a southern twang, and
yeah.
although that you could kind of joke that that's the country bumpkins you're trying to say women aren't smart enough, which some people might do because some
Mm-hmm.
people look that deep into it. But the thing is, there's the females, like you said, leading in the video. about the Dominion, when they talked about the engineer and the dev speak, it wasn't he. It was she has this big gun, she has robots, she's going to do damage. There
Hmm.
is this inclusion of both male and female. There is not all male dominated or male focused drive, which
Yeah.
a lot of games tend to have. Now, as to whether or not you want to go into detail on some of the other things that you and I were talking about off air, I'll leave that to you, or we can come back to it.
Yeah. No, no, no,
Put you on the spot, I will.
no,
Okay.
no.
All right. Well, let me do this. Let me pull back. We've discussed a tiny bit about the PvP. We've tackled one of the big
Mhm.
things that everyone's going on about, which is the quote unquote objectification of women. Now, the next thing that I want to tackle into is basically the cream of the crop of the show title. I mean, the Redactineer. It's no longer the Redactineer, it's the Engineer.
Mhm.
Now, what to you makes the Engineer different than just, say, any other class that you've run across in either WildStar or in the game?
Okay. It's it's difficult to say how is it completely unique because that then draws on a lot of the active combat systems that WildStar's already got. So let me tell you kind of the recipe for an engineer, and we'll go from there. So it is a pet class, and it will feel a bit like a hunter to a lot of people, apart from the fact it wears heavy armor. It also has a mixture of pets, so you're not going to have uh, just one pet that you bring out. You've got four robots, four different bots that you can choose from, and you can have any two from the four deployed. But they do take up action slots, so you're sacrificing other abilities if you want to bring the robots into play. And they're also pretty dumb, so you can tell them to
So you
attack
don't have
things.
a hunter bar, quote unquote, or a pet bar that lets you
You have a
minutely
oh yeah,
control them?
you have a pet bar, but it's like the pet bar in it's like the pet bar in Warcraft. So you can tell it to go here and attack this mob, or you can tell it to go passive. You can tell it to go aggressive and stuff like that. You can also give it commands to go to a particular location if you want to, but that's still pretty dumb. I found that in PvP, for example, you're better off running without them because they will literally go and attack the first thing that lays finger on you, and that's the last thing you'll see from your bot until you respawn at the graveyard. So not really useful. They also trip up on bridges a bit at the moment, like hunters used to do originally in WoW. So there's
Mm.
still a couple of pathing issues and stuff with them. They are fantastic when you are out leveling because the Bruiser bot will off tank for you. So if you've got two or three mobs, you can chuck the Bruiser bot in there and he'll tank for you while you're doing various bits and pieces. But
So,
yeah,
well, sticking on the bots, but we'll come back to Tilix's question because I think that's a fair question. But is it anything like City of Villains where you can actually give your pets rally points?
um, I haven't come across anything yet.
Sorry, my phone went off. Fair enough. Um, the thing that gets me about the bots and the usage of bots is the fact that in a game that is free-form targeting, how do
Mhm.
you really control and tell it which one you want it to attack if you have two mobs right on top of each other, and you actually want it to hit this mob but not this one because you got this one down packed, yet, and you tell it to attack, how does it know the difference between which one you want when you don't have that quote unquote typical targeting system that
Yeah.
is built into a lot of MMOs?
Hmm.
How does
Exactly.
that work?
Exactly. Um,
Do you know? Have you tried that? Or does it not know? Or is it really just that stupid? It just doesn't know.
it's it's not a smart bot. So it's not a smart bot. Like I said, it's great when you're like you've got like one or two or maybe a small cluster of mobs that you can just tell it in and say, tank that bunch for me while I deal with this thing, and it will go and do that. It has a great ability where it will pounce to a particular target and taunt them all for you and keep hold of them, which is really good. But
Jerdar is saying that the attack command's a narrow telegraph, but that still doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get the mob in the back that you want it to attack because it's a ranged mob
exactly,
or something like that. So
exactly.
I guess that's a
So
matter of you actually have to do your dodge out of the way,
yeah,
make certain you've got nothing else targeted. That adds a level of
yeah.
skill to the play style.
Well, like I said, it's not been brilliant. It's 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 a lot of faff for what it is. They don't last very long anyway, so they've not got a huge amount of health, which is why I say in PvP, forget it. Seriously, ain't worth it.
Hmm. Can you hotkey the pet commands to your keyboard and mouse? Stab Pound would like to
Yes,
know. Yes, you can.
yes, you can.
So you do have a bit of control of them with the different things
You,
that you can do. Maybe
you have a
what's
limit.
going on is they still, I mean, they're still kind of fixing things. This is still in beta, and I think people
Yeah,
need to remember that. So,
exactly.
and there are
I
macros
would.
in the game. I keep interrupting you. I'm so sorry.
There are macros, but it's like anything. If you want to do a particular thing, now, I think that with the engineer, a lot of the pet management stuff is going to come out through add-ons. So the bare basic add-ons, or the bare basic Carbine interface, is great for what it does. I think if you really want to start going into PvP with your pet, then I think some people are going to start putting add-ons together which will control them to certain extents.
Mm.
I do not think that it's a difficult thing. I think that what we're going to end up with is people using things like the Naga mouse, the Naga hex, or stuff like that, and start doing funky stuff with that to then have their pet controls there while they've got their main ability controls. But I really think that for a lot of stuff, it's going to be a case of you look at your loadout and you think, well, if I'm doing a standard questing thing, then I'll chuck a bot or two in there. If I'm doing PvP, then if I'm doing PvP, I probably won't have the pets. If I'm doing dungeoning, I might use the Bruiser bot to do off tanking, or I might use uh, um, the crowd control bot to do the crowd control some mobs for me while I'm trying to take care of some stuff. If I'm tanking or if I'm doing DPS in the dungeon. If I'm raiding, I will probably just stick to core abilities again. So it's a case of cutting your cloth to suit what you're doing rather than
Mm.
trying to say, I want to do X, Y, and Z to try and make the pets work for me. I think it's going to be a case of the pets work in this situation, or the bots work in this situation, which is brilliant. The bots aren't ideal or aren't optimal for these other situations, but these other abilities that I have are, and they're really cool, and they give me things like more crowd control or more stunning in PvP, which is what you
Mm.
want, really. Or they give you more DPS and drop more fields and give you more abilities to support your group, which is what you want in raiding and dungeoneering to a certain extent. So it's going to be a case of these tools are useful and they're signature, but they're only good in specific situations, like all abilities are in WildStar. You don't want to be
Right.
trying to force an ability to work in all situations when it shouldn't really be made for that.
So basically, despite the fact that you do have these awesome bots with really cool faces running around
Hmm.
with you, you got to keep in mind that this is not supposed to be your game-breaking mechanic. This is just
Yeah,
one of the many mechanics that you, as an engineer, can use to accomplish
yeah,
your goals, whatever your goals may
ex-
be.
exactly.
And
And I can,
I hope people can kind of remember that, because the moment you start to throw
yeah.
pet in there, the very first thing that's going to come out is, oh, how much control do I have over my pet? Is it, a proper
Mm,
pet class? The reality is your pet is your ability.
exactly.
You
And
know,
it's
it's
like
it's just like what was the one that the espers use, that is the mind bullet dagger throw thing. I don't know the name of it. But it's just an ability.
yeah, and that's the key thing. That's the key thing. Um, so yeah, I would say that don't get too attached to bots. They are awesome. There are situations like open world PvP where I can see the Bruiser bot again being very, very useful. But don't get attached to them to
Can you
such an
name them?
extent where you're. Sorry?
Can you name them?
Name what?
The bots.
There's the Bruiser bots,
No,
there's the
can
artillery
you
bot.
rename them as a character? If I have
Oh,
bots and I'm an engineer, can I name
oh,
mine
right, okay.
Squishy and Polka Dot and Marmoset?
Customization of the bots is one of the biggest questions that Carbine are getting at the moment. It was the top question on the engineer Reddit AMA. No, you can't.
Then there's no reason to get fully attached to them.
Yeah.
If you can't
They
have that
are
much
looking.
control, it's going to be a lot easier to see them as disposable than, oh
Yeah,
my God, I have to keep these alive at all costs.
yeah.
Unlike a
Um,
hunter in WoW, where it's
yeah.
important.
Jaredar mentions a very valid point, that the game breaking, in quotes, the class defining ability that you have is your innate ability. So for the engineer, it's putting on the Mark IV exosuit and doing something with that. With other classes, it's things like the spell slinger's innate ability, which escapes me off the top of my head. It's things like the Esper's ability to become almost invulnerable. All things like that, which make them really great classes with brilliant signature moves. But it's never your abilities, the things you can do. So like Spellslinger can do the gate ability and teleport forward. That's a fun thing that you might have on your hotkey bar, but it's not the class defining thing. So that's the way I see it.
I'd have to completely agree with you. I mean, as stated, you did state that the amount of bots you can have out at any one time is two. And
Yeah.
you can't duplicate, so you can't have two bruisers out, you can't have two
No.
CCs out. You have to pick either your heal bot. How funny is that? Your heal bot, your tank bot, your DPS bot, or your control bot. You have to
Yeah.
pick which ones you want. So it's more or less, again, a reiteration. And I think this is a brilliant thing because the limitation on the bots and the implication that it has with the lass does help to keep people from growing too attached to, as Zuluko calls it, Robbie the robot, which some people may
Yeah.
actually want to call what their robot is
Yeah.
or what things. But it does also mean that there's a lot of lack of micromanagement. And I think someone actually just made that thing, or yeah, there's a danger, I think, if they gave too much micromanagement control to bots. That's kind of adding a whole nother layer of things that may make the game less fun. Because if I had the ability to control, I don't know, as I can't get the Esper's the sword ability, the one where they summon all the swords and then they throw them. I can't remember what
Yeah.
that's called, but I can't get that out of my head. If I had the ability to summon them and then micromanage what direction I wanted each sword to go, that to me is kind
Yeah.
of like if I had bots. So I
Yeah.
think there's a danger if they give too much micro control to a quote unquote ability, it could actually be damaging and game breaking on a balance level.
Yeah. The other thing that you need to bear in mind is that the the issue with having a pets class where you're actively managing the pets in a game where you have very high levels of active combat makes it, okay, what do you try and put your focus on? Do you put your focus on what you're trying to do with your character or what you're trying to do with your pets? Or try and split it between the two and end up going, my brain doesn't work like that. So that's the other thing you need to bear in mind. So in PvP, your primary goal is to stay the hell alive. And if your bots can help you with that, fantastic. If your bots cannot help you with that, then they might just as well be an oil slick in the road that you try and trip people up on. That's the kind of mentality that you need to be thinking. My main purpose with playing a particular class is to be active, to be mobile. Particularly with the engineer, you get a penalty to movement speed whenever you're casting, but you can cast every single one of your abilities while moving. So it's really a case of, why am I standing still? And if I have to faff around to tell a pet to go here and there and everywhere, while I am trying to move and point in the right direction so I can shoot things while dealing with being CC'd myself and stuff like that, if the pet's too complex or too much of a pain in the backside, it can take a hike. So
Well, of course, this is where I'm going to pretend to be Mizpah, aka the Mizpahcorn that happens to be currently on the screen with us, and I'm going to say, but I like that kind of style. I like the amount of effort you have to put in, and that's really, I can't, I have tried to impersonate you. I have tried to impersonate Mizpah. I can't do it. But, he will be the first one to sit there and say, I want that kind of challenge. I want the challenge to be there. But I think I'm going to have to wait till he comes back because I want to ask him if he's changed his thoughts on that ever so slightly. Because the reality
I've,
is, like you said, you are trying to move, you're trying to control everything. Now, if you were in a
mhm,
DPS role and you weren't trying to tank, maybe you have a bit more flexibility, but this is a game where if you stand still, you die.
yeah. So I think there's two things with that. I think if you want to spend time mastering that and trying to get there, then go for it. if you really, really want to put the time and the effort in to play like that and sink talent points into, or rather AMP points into it, and really build your limited action set around that, then go for it. Be my guest. Feel free. I think it's a bit of a joke to try and do that. I think there are other ways of building your limited action set that could be more effective. I think that particularly in battlegrounds combat, but it's like I've always said, you try and adapt to the situation. Part of knowing your class well means that you know all of your class's abilities, and you don't think that there's one set of abilities that works in every single situation. That's not just true with WildStar, that's true with every single MMO that's ever come out since EverQuest back in 1990 something. So
Well,
I think that, and the problem that's happened is that, yes, to a certain extent, we have seen kind of class homogenization and class simplification in certain MMOs, where all it takes is to master a particular rotation and you're their job done. I think that it's very important to say, okay, you have certain abilities which will work in certain situations very well, and you have certain other abilities which will work in other situations very well. But part of being a good player is not saying, this is how I play, I will cludge everything to fit how I play, but this is what works best for those situations. I will improve my skills to really dominate in those huge range of situations.
well, the thing that sticks out to me, and this is just from what little and stuff that I've seen, if you, in a lot of games, you really want to understand your class. You want to be able to play it well. You want to be able to do the best. At least that's the kind of people we are. That's the kind of people our audience are. No one's going to want to just sit there and just spam Shadow Bolt unless it's the most efficient way to do what you're supposed to be doing. However, I think what people are going to need to remember is that when it comes to the different abilities and things that you are doing, I think with WildStar, you are penalized as heck if you don't keep in mind and improve your skill set. This is an unforgiving game that I am seeing. It is one of those things where you have your different abilities, you have the different choices that you can make, but if you are not picking the right ability or the right sequence or what have you, you're going to get hurt. You're going to
Yeah.
find yourself in damage. You're going to find yourself in a situation where you're doing the damage, but you're not getting the same output because you didn't pre-do something else, or you didn't prep something else, or you didn't hit from a certain thing, or you didn't the interrupt armor that gets mentioned on things. I mean, WildStar seems to reward you for improving, whereas other games just kind of say, "Oh, you're not going to do as much damage, but you're still going to win." At least that's what I'm
So
noticing. Would you agree with that?
yes and no.
Mm.
I think WildStar is deliberately designed to cater for people of variable skill strengths. I think if you are questing, if you want to do adventures, if you want to do PvE content, stuff like that, then you will not have a difficult experience. Yeah, you'll be able to quest, you'll be able to level up, you'll be able to do dungeons and stuff like that. Although the dungeons are pretty brutal at the moment, and that's just from looking at what's his name, Jade thing that managed to. I forget his name, the Esper class lead who tried to heal his way through a dungeon and wiped 3 times. It's like, yeah, those are pretty brutal. Now, we played Storm Talon's Lair back at the Arkship event as well, and when we did it then, that was also pretty like, oh, this is not like a snooze-a-thon 5-man, which we've experienced in the past. But my point was that I think people will be able to level up without any problem at all. I think people will be able to get experience with the game without any problem at all. I think if you want to do some of the more powerful abilities and get rewarded for them, then I think it's going to be a case of you're going to need to pull out more skill. So if you want to get things like the double kill, the triple kill, the mega kills, the ultra kills, then you're going to need to play better. And you get rewarded for that, So you get more XP and stuff for it.
Well,
But
that's the thing. You
if
get
you're just
rewarded for improving your skill style.
exactly. But I think that if you want to be able to, if you don't think you've got that much skill, you'll still be able to get a lot of enjoyment out of WildStar, and they've deliberately said that. But there are challenges in there which do demand a fair chunk of skill. I mean, Battlegrounds, you can still throw yourself in, you can fail like there's no tomorrow, and you will still earn prestige,
I'm gonna enjoy
which you
watching
can
you
use to
play
buy
this
gear.
weekend. I
So
will. I'll be sitting there
yeah,
going, yeah, how is he in PvP? I got to measure up because you know I'm going to come after you. You're a Dominion Chua.
yeah.
Of course I'm going to come after you.
So I think that um, there are definitely instances where you're going to go in and you're going to go, okay, I can play this, I can go in there and I will lose, but I will have fun. And my ELO rating will plummet like a stone. I don't care, I'm having fun, I'm enjoying myself, and I'm learning and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you do have a personal ELO rating in Battlegrounds. So the idea is that you're matched with people of a similar ELO rating, and by the end of it, you should end up with kind of like a 50-50 win-lose ratio, and your ELO rating stays kind of static. But to start off with, at least, you will find that either your ELO rating goes up because you know how to play, and you've got a lot of skill, and you've been practicing, or it sinks like a stone because you don't have the right gear, because you're being leveled up and you're only level 6 and the bracket ends at level 14, and other bits and pieces like that. So there's a number of reasons why you might suffer at the beginning. But I think in things like arenas, level cap, and I think things like veteran mode dungeons, which are also a level cap thing, and raiding, which is a level cap thing, I think you're going to be looking at those and going, I might need to learn all of the ins and outs of my class before I try and do those and be successful at the same time.
Ooh. I'm really looking forward to that challenge. This is something that I feel is lacking, is a real hardcore set of challenges that not just teach you need to know your class, but also your positioning. The action combat is something that really, really appeals to me. I'm going to throw two quick questions at you, and then I'm looking at the time going, ooh, I don't want to keep everybody forever. So,
Yeah.
two questions for you.
Uh-huh.
Typhly, I think I sang your name right because it scrolled off the screen, was wondering if Warriors were still shafted even after a patch that had come out. And we have Loken who believes that the Spell Slingers got shafted with their innate ability. Do you think, I mean, it is beta. We're not expecting everything to be
Okay.
100%
So,
polished.
yeah.
But what are your thoughts or opinions on not just the different innates? Do you believe that where they're at right now is good, or do you think they're going to change? But,
Yeah.
you know, there's Tillix. Thank you. Your name just happened to scroll off my screen, so it was difficult for me to remember your name. And I wrote it down, but my handwriting got a little sloppy because I was getting excited by what was being said there. So I do apologize. But yes. So, yeah, go ahead. Lead us on.
Okay. So I think there are two issues here. First of all, beta is beta, and I'm expecting to see many, many balancing passes as we go through the winter beta and into a spring beta, and then maybe an open beta, and then launch. So I'm expecting balance passes to continue to happen all the way through that as we get more people in. But there are two things to consider. The first thing is trying to give good quality feedback to the class design team to say, I am having a problem because of X or because of Y, and it might be something like saying, I'm having a problem playing my spell slinger because my spell slinger's abilities are all really narrow, and if I'm doing PvE, then I get surrounded by a load of mobs in a wide arc, and I've got no way of dealing with them. In which case, it's a case of learn where your stun abilities are, stun them, blink away, turn around, blap, which is kind of what you need to do. That's the kind of thing. If it's a case of I'm a warrior and I'm having problems with closing range, and my closer ability is being used up far too much jumping around, and people have more movement than I do, then yes, there is an element of that, although the warrior does have this really cool whirlwind ability, which is devastating in PvP because it is literally spin to win.
Terminology.
But it's things like that. Things will go back and forth. You'll have people who are buffed, people who are nerfed, and I am going to mourn the loss of Ghostcrawler at Blizzard because of all the kind of nerf and buff discussions that he used to have. But I think it's so yeah. First one is good quality feedback about a specific situation where the class falls short and what can be done to improve the class, bearing in mind that the improvement that is made might not be the same as the one that you're demanding.
Mm.
The second thing is that a lot of people are giving feedback without knowing about it. Just by going through dungeons, just by playing the game, Carbine are able to collect statistics on your particular class, what level you are, what mobs you're facing, what your survivability is, how much damage you're doing, what abilities you're using, and what a mix of abilities and so on, and being able to make judgments from that. And they might say, okay, this person's dying a lot, but they're only using the 6 abilities they unlocked first and have not played around with limited action sets. So maybe rather than trying to say we need to improve those abilities, it might be we need to improve the discovery of the limited action set by maybe reinforcing it in a tutorial or something. So it's things like that as well. So there are lots of different reasons why some classes might be doing well, some classes might not be doing so well, and why feedback is important. But I'm expecting a lot of that to happen between now and launch sometime next year.
Well, they keep stressing spring of 2014. I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed. And I will reiterate, I am perfectly content waiting as long as they get it right.
I would like to see, I'd like to see them spend as long on this game as they need to produce something of good quality. So if it needs further polishing passes to really make that content shine, then do it. If it needs further tweaks and balance checks to really hone the combat and make it feel good, although I'll be honest with you, combat already feels really, really good, then go for it. If it's a case that you really want to try and make sure that all the content is in there for launch, then go ahead, spend time to do all that work to make sure that you're not going to pull an Age of Conan and hit level 30 or whatever, and then find there's no content there. So I really want them to take their time and make sure there's plenty of game of good quality for everyone to play when it launches.
I completely agree with that. And with that, we do come and we draw ourselves sort of full circle, and to at least the end of this, we will do a very quick post show afterwards because I have things to share with Gazi that don't need to be on the Cosmotronic particular episode. But yes, as a reminder, every Friday night, 8 p.m. GMT, we have this show. We usually have more of us. Sometimes we even have Kai Dream, who has time available to join us. So we mix it up a little bit. We will be talking everything WildStar. And with the releases of information, there's going to be things that we're going to be looking at besides just simply, hey, this information got released. For example, we want to dig into why certain things have happened. So keep that in mind because that seems to be our thing. But yes, I think in the end, even with all this stuff that's being released, are you still excited, Gazi, about WildStar? Because I know I am.
I am definitely excited about it.
Well, that's definitely a good thing. But yes, please remember to follow us, write to us if you have any questions, comments, concerns, voice at MMOBuff.TV. You can go to YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Google+. We're all MMOBuff. Check us out, follow us, etc. Spread the word, spread the love, etc. However, what I'm going to do is one of these things. I'm going to say, Gazi, go ahead and say bye-bye to our friends.
Goodbye.
And then I will say bye-bye to our friends, and we'll be back in just a couple seconds. Toodle pip.